Hey guys, okay, today I'm with Kerstin again. She's the owner of Shangri-Paw, the best cat hotel in Singapore. We're gonna talk about something a little bit more serious, which is one of the most, would you say, devastating cat diagnoses, right?
Definitely, and cat hotel is one thing, but coming from a rescue environment, that's one of the things you don't want to pick up, like a cat that has FELV, because then all of a sudden we don't know what to do anymore.
There are two things that usually people test for. One is FELV and one is FIV. We are gonna focus on FELV today. FIV is
It's called feline AIDS, feline immune deficiency virus.
And FELV is feline leukemia, which is completely different from human leukemia. The reason why we are making this video is because I got a cat and we went to test him for FELV, and for whatever reason, even though he looks very healthy, he tested positive. And then that was the initial test, and then vet asked us to go for a PCR test, which is pretty expensive. So the PCR test results actually showed him to be negative. So between the first test and the second test, I was like messaging Kerstin a lot, asking her for help, because if you just Google FELV, you will see a lot of articles saying that, oh no, it's the end, it's the type of thing, right? So I think it can be very worrying. I'm just very glad that my cat is healthy, but FELV is not that uncommon either. So I think we just want to make this video to create awareness on what you could possibly do if your cat unfortunately is diagnosed with FELV.
So the first thing you're gonna do is have hope that it's a false positive. Obviously, we always hope for the best. This happens in testing. Like with your cat, I've had cases of owners here at the cat hotel. They had to test the cats in order to board them here. All of a sudden, two 14-year-old cats that have been living their whole life indoors were adopted at 5 months old. One of them tests positive. And you're just like, that can't be, right?
Yeah.
And again, like in your case, PCR testing confirmed that it was a false positive. Those things can happen. On the other hand, it is quite common in Singapore, stray cats. So whenever your cat comes from an outdoor environment, has been exposed to the outdoors, maybe they were an indoor-outdoor cat, maybe they escaped, then you have to take this seriously because it could be a real positive test.
What exactly is FELV? Because it's not like human leukemia, right? So how do you even contract FELV?
Basically, it's contracted through close contact. Saliva, urine, feces, cats grooming each other, cats sharing food bowls, water bowls, which a lot of community cats outside would be doing. FELV is a so-called retrovirus, which is a bit different than, let's say, your common cold virus in humans, which you contract, your immune system fights it off, and then you're done with it and you're immune to it. The FELV virus actually can hide inside the body. So first it will be detectable in the blood, which is when the SNAP tests in the clinic typically detect it. Later on, that virus can be fought off, but it might be in the genome basically of the cat. So it can be suppressed, and the cat might actually start testing negative on the blood tests. It might become uninfectious to other cats because the viral load is so low and it's been suppressed. But there can be triggers that can basically reactivate the virus because it stays in the body. And that's the risky thing, that we don't really know how after a real positive test the disease will progress and how the virus will react. And this is what's so concerning, because if you'd have several cats in your home, one might be negative and you brought in a new one that's positive. So what should you do now? Even if it tests negative, can you trust this? And for how long? And this is why this is so tricky, because we always advocate for several cats in a home, but FELV cats are advised to be single cats.
So when a cat is diagnosed with FELV, how should his or her owner kind of react to it, and how can they manage the situation?
There's basically 3 different stages. FELV virus can either be abortive, which means the body completely fought it off, it was in the blood, but then it cannot be detected in your PCR test. Or it can be so-called regressive, which was I explained, it's basically been hiding. It's still inside the body, but it's not doing anything. Or then the last one is progressive, which is when you actually have the virus replicating in the bone marrow, and that will then eventually show clinical signs. Now, let's say the test comes back as progressive. It's very important to separate it from other negative cats in order to contain the virus with this cat. Then you want to give it the healthiest life possible. Good food, making sure nutrition is all up to scratch, supplements, vitamins, everything. Regular vet checks, regular blood tests to monitor, for example, are the red blood cells or white blood cells affected in any way, so that you can catch any sign of disease early. Typically, those cats are more susceptible to other diseases and struggle to fight them off. The current advice is to still vaccinate your cat to protect it. There has been some times when they say don't vaccinate the cat because it could trigger the immune system, but basically you want to vaccinate it and protect it from boarding environments, other cats, you know, they're in clinics, there could always be a risk.
If your cat is FELV positive, does that mean that you cannot board your cat and you cannot bring him or her for grooming?
No, because typically in the end, it's a virus that is not that easily spread in like a human and safe environment. It's mostly close cat-to-cat contact, but it requires extra hygiene protocols. So your groomer or your boarding place must know that the cat is FELV positive. We most likely wouldn't board a cat that has clinical signs. If they're sick in any other way and there's big concerns, we might check with the vet first. But generally, if your cat is otherwise healthy, clinically well, and is positive, then we basically apply special quarantine or isolation protocols, which means we mark your food bowls or ask you to bring your own food bowls, water bowls. We sanitize them and disinfect them much more than the average need for the regular negative cat.
You know, I've actually been reading quite a lot of articles online that say that cats who are FELV positive with clinical signs, they don't end up living very long, right? I see most people say 1 to 2 years. Is that true?
Yes. Unfortunately, that's true. Once they start getting sicker and start showing clinical signs, usually the time is 1 to 2 years that they have. And again, it depends. Each cat is different, but sometimes it can go very fast. It also depends, do they have any other issues? Some cats start having kidney disease. Maybe they also are FIV positive. There's a lot of factors. Age matters too. What time did they contract the virus? Did they contract it as a kitten? Then their lifespan can be very, very short. If they contract it as an older cat, sometimes they are healthy and have good quality of life longer.
Right. So if someone does have a FELV positive cat and they are showing clinical signs, they are worried about like the vet bills and, you know, what would be your advice for them?
Oh, this is very hard because especially vet bills can pile up. Now with FELV, there is also a drug called Retromad, which people can talk to the vet about, which if it's given early on is supposedly prolonging the lifespan and quality of life for cats. Otherwise, what I would always say is, you know your cat best. You know what quality of life means for your cat. Of course, you try to treat it the best you can, but then at some point you have to see when does it have quality of life or not, and what are your choices when this happens.
False positives are not exactly uncommon. So when, like for example, my situation, right, the cat tests positive, then after that on a PCR test negative, usually the vet will say, oh, it's come back in 6 months to just confirm. If there is a double negative on the PCR, quite likely it's abortive. Is that true?
It's quite likely, but I think FELV is still not enough understood and researched for vets to really be 100% positive. Like now you don't have to worry, because if you read that result, it will also say it could be an undetected strain, or maybe there's a really tiny viral load. So that's why vets will tell you, okay, you gotta wait 6 months, and any positive test you should repeat, even the PCR test. So it's not 100% peace of mind. It's highly unlikely. But I've also had a vet tell me that cats that ever tested positive, whether it's via SNAP or PCR, should be retested every year, just to be sure. You can or cannot do that. But if you have a single cat, you don't worry so much, because you're just going to do whatever you can anyway to give them the best life possible. But if a cat then starts showing clinical signs, then you might want to check, could this be related?
Yeah, makes sense. Is there anything else that you think is important for people who are looking at FELV to know?
Prevention.
Yes.
There is a high prevalence in Singapore. There's still some people that want to let their cat go outside or roam. If you do so on a leash, it doesn't have contact with other cats, that's perfectly fine. But if you let your cat outside from a first floor apartment, from a landed property, the risk is high. So that would be one of my concerns. I would never let my cat go outside because it could contract FELV. And the vaccination that exists is supposedly not that great. High risk of side effects, not necessarily effective. So it's always best to prevent it. Also, if you adopt a cat, make sure it's tested before you mix it with your own cat.
And you can easily test it with a simple blood test at the vet, right?
Yes, simple blood test. You get the result of the SNAP test within 30 minutes. So it's always worth it. And if somebody picks up a cat from the street, you also have to consider it could have been infected the day before.
Right.
So in that case, if you think, oh, it came from an area with many, many other cats, or maybe it has some bite wounds or scratch marks, so it had been in in very close contact with other cats, you might want to reconsider even a negative test to repeat it 2 months down the road, just to see that it didn't just pick it up the day before. We just had a rescue case, 3 older kittens, 1 was tested as a sample, was negative. 3 months down the road, we tested the other ones because they were supposed to go into boarding. All of a sudden, all 3 positive.
Wow. It's tough because it's super unpredictable and there is no real solution to it, right?
No.
Case by case.
Case by case, just be very careful, test as much as you can. Whatever happens, give your cat a good life.
So if you are watching this video because you might have a suspected FELV positive case, we hope that this has given you some information, some comfort. I think FELV, based on my personal experience, can be quite scary, especially if you don't know whether it's really positive or like a false positive. I do think whatever the case is, you already have the cat, so you just give him or her the best life possible, like what Kerstin said. Alright, thank you so much for watching and we'll see you in the next video. Peace!